In the last lecture, I was just discussing, of course, that really didn't cover World War II very well. I'll kind of end up kind of retroactively going back into certain points that I wanted to make, but really talk about the effects of World War II. So we talked about the effects of World War I on world culture and world civilization, and we're going to talk about the effects of World War II on it. And you'll see very easily a certain set of patterns and things that come up that I hope will make more sense to you than maybe they did before. So we go to there's several things that happen. So after World War II, there's these conferences. Now, for a moment, I just want you to kind of think about, and I'm going to revisit the complications of the Versailles Treaty. We talk about how conferences, though they're not wars, can have effects that are really unpredictable or can affect countries in ways that lead to worse conditions later on. So, you see a bunch of men dressed up and they have these polite conversations, but what that's really going to result in is the future will tell. So here we have it, the Yalta and the Potsdam conferences, and this is the main thing I want you to know about these. 1945, the post-war peace plan. Stalin bargained in his favor. So keep this in mind. Remember here, I always wanted this picture in my living room, and I'm not kidding. That's great. Stalin, Roosevelt, and Churchill. These are the three guys that would get drunk together in the White House over war plans. And here they're going to be enemies as soon as the war is over. And as you look, Stalin is kind of uncomfortably over here. Roosevelt and Churchill over here. But who was really left intact? Britain was really a mess, but Britain, I don't know, maybe because of our loyalties too. In any case, you have Britain and you have America playing a strong role. And remember, we are really in a strong position because while the rest of Europe just destroyed each other, we actually help, get involved and without almost unscratched. And so we're going to be in a kind of privileged position that nobody else is going to have. Stalin, remember, defeats Hitler, and he does that by cutting through other European countries, his troops. And this puts him in a very favored position. But at the same time, remember that the USSR took some of the strongest hits out of all the nations in World War II. He needs to gain something. So as a dictator or a democrat, it doesn't matter. Russia would have needed to bargain something in their favor after they've gone through what they did. And so Stalin was really good at manipulating or maneuvering, however you want to look at it, like things in favor of Russia in many cases. And in the middle of all this, these different events, Roosevelt dies. He's replaced by Truman. And so Truman is very hostile to communism, much more so. He once said that he hoped the war killed as many as possible. Churchill is going to later be replaced by the Labour Party, a socialist, Clement Attlee. And so there's all sorts of different shifts that are going to go on in these diplomatic shifts. And we're going to return later to some, right now this might be a little bit murky. Maybe a little bit later it'll be clear on what significance these have, okay? Now, America, it's still not over, especially in regards of Japan. And remember that, right? Because we think about America being involved in World War II, and I said that Stalin defeats Hitler, and you're like, wait a minute, it doesn't make sense. So he defeats Hitler, but there was Japan, and we really have a lot more impact in terms of like even you talk about the war in Asia. So America confronts Japan or Stalin. I have question marks. I have Potsdam. What's that mean? Truman gets news and Stalin of a successful atomic bomb test. Truman demands free elections in Europe from Stalin. So remember, Stalin now is occupying Eastern Europe. And Truman says, hey, you got to give free elections. In other words, so we can get communism out. The bomb is to be dropped in Japan on August 6, 1945. Um, and many people believe, and I think this is a fair thing to say, and you can debate this with me if you want, or some different sources, that despite the fact that it's argued that the nuclear bomb was dropped on Japan to save more American lives by not having to have, boots on the ground fighting, it's really believed that the message was sent to Russia to say, look what we've got, and this is what we can do. And that has a morally problematic aspect to it, right? I do not want to be kind to Japan in terms of World War II. The things that they did, like many other nations, and I also don't want to be overly harsh on them, was quite brutal. But a nuclear bomb is a pretty, remember, a nuclear bomb kills civilians mainly. Now, if it's really for the greater good, that's a different argument than sending a message to your enemy like, hey, don't mess with us. That's kind of got that mafia style. Well, this is the kind of controversy that modern historians have been kind of bumping around now about that issue, okay? And so the U.S. uses nuclear bombs August 6th and August 9th, 1945. Hiroshima, Japan, 90,000 to 166,000 killed in Hiroshima. Imagine Santa Cruz is 15,000 people. Or think about Modesto, was it like close to 200,000? Imagine almost the entire town of Modesto just like completely obliterated. And then Nagasaki, remember, we always think about Hiroshima, then 60 to 80,000 killed. These are almost all civilians. Now, we also think of terrorism being something where you simply attack civilians and not soldiers. Oh, now I'm getting into something controversial, right? But we got to go there. And again, Japan as a nation state was very aggressive. So I'm not just leaving Japan off the hook. I really want to point out that these events, which are so significant, have to be reflected upon, especially in the way that politics discusses violence and what is okay and what's not okay. And I don't know, that's something you have to decide for yourself, but it's pretty intense. And keep in mind that while the U.S. Considers threatening maybe bombing Iran for having a nuclear bomb, to this date, no nation in the world has ever used a nuclear bomb except for the United States government, just to say. So, I'm going to end it there and we'll move on to the next section.